I'd like to welcome everybody to the East Bay Community Energy Board of Directors meeting for February 20th. First item of business would be, because I always do the pledge first, first item would be have Councilmember Cobb lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Could I please have the roll call?
Albany. Berkeley. Dublin is excused. Emeryville. Here. Fremont.
Here.
Hayward.
Here.
Livermore. Oakland.
Here.
Piedmont.
Here.
San Leandro.
Present.
Union City. Community Advisory Committee. Here. Thank you. You have a quorum. Sorry, Alameda County.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So with that, I'm going to move to item 3, which is to appoint labor negotiations. It is an action item to appoint the following board members as your negotiators: Jesse Arreguin, Scott Hagerty, Dan Kelb, Diane Martinez, and Al Mendel. It is an action item. I had a motion to my left. And I have a set motion. Okay, motion by Arreguin, second by Martinez. Under discussion, Mr. Pilch, you want to say something?
Just wondered if this seems fine to me, but are the duties of the labor negotiators spelled out somewhere in some document?
Not really. So when you do an employment review, if you want to discuss anything than any of the compensation package or anything in closed session, you do it through negotiators. And so you need to appoint the negotiators before you go in. So it's really what duties you as a board give to the negotiators.
Hold on.
Okay. This comes as just a surprise to me,
We've done this before.
What's that?
We've done this before.
We've had an item on the agenda to appoint the labor negotiators.
Yep.
Okay, then I must have missed it. Don't have anything more to say about it this time, so I'll shut up.
Director Mendel?
Yeah, and just to be clear,
It's kind of perfunctory.
the labor negotiators, they don't have decision-making authority. The board would make that. It's just a matter of not, if there was a need for a discussion that went back and forth, we wouldn't have to have all 13 of us there present for it. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any objection to the motion? The motion passes with the roll call that was in the affirmative. So the closed section, do you want to read each one there? I would just adjourn a closed session, but if you are going to read each one, I'll sit back.
The one that you need to read out is the existing litigation.
Go ahead. It's
Okay.
item C.
So in addition to closed session for employee performance evaluation, the board will be going to closed session with legal counsel to discuss existing litigation. The case is PG&E Corporation of Pacific Gas and Electric Company as debtors in bankruptcy case 19-30088 in the U.S. Bankruptcy Court, Northern District, California.
There you have it. See you all in closed session. Spadowski sat right there, right on the end.
This is Livermore, huh?
Sure.
Okay, then.
And so with that, I will first go to item 4A. Ask Chair Martinez, is there anything to report out of closed session on the public employee?
There were no reportable actions taken on A and B.
Thank you. Now I'll go to our council for report out on closed session on B and C. Wait, I'm sorry, I've done that wrong. So the reportable action from Chair Martinez was A and B. And then on C, is there any reportable action?
So I'm reporting out both from the January 16th, 2019 closed session and the closed session which was listed as pending litigation and tonight's closed session. And the obligation is to report out what the case is as soon as the agency is involved. EBCE is protecting its rights in the PG&E bankruptcy matter, case number 19-30088 in the U.S. Bankruptcy Court in Northern District of California, and council gave an update to and received direction from the board in closed session on the litigation.
Okay. All right, thank you. Move to item 6, public comment, time which you can speak to anything that is not on today's agenda. Al Weinrab. Good evening, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, all of you. For those here who don't know me, I'm Al Weinrab. I'm the coordinator of the local Clean Energy Alliance in the Bay Area, but actually right now, for this 2 minutes, I'm speaking to you as a coordinator of a statewide organization that spans California called the California Alliance for Community Energy. And I had to put on your desk in front of you a document. You can see the logo, California Alliance for Community Energy. It says a new statewide campaign. When I spoke to you last meeting, I talked about a letter from East Bay Clean Power Alliance to you all as members of the board to really take on the frontal assault that's being launched against community choice statewide, but in particular here by the California Public Utilities Commission that has many different manifestations to it. And at the time, we asked in advance for some support for the type of public campaign that's going to be coming. Well, this is that public campaign, and I just want to say a word or two about it. Basically, the notion here is that the CPUC over the last few years has had a whole litany of attacks against community choice, which are documented and referred to in the papers here. But most recently, with the October 11th decision to dramatically increase the PCIA, it became pretty much an existential question for community choice, and one which we thought it was really important for the community to take up and to be able to protect the community choice programs that we have played a large role in creating around the state. And so this campaign does reflect that, but it reflects the fact that the CPUC's action is not only an attack on community choice per se, but on other ratepayers, bundled ratepayers as well, and is manifested also by its response to the PG&E bankruptcy, which is the notion of bailing out $30+ billion of fire liabilities to ratepayers. So this is framed as an attack on our communities because it has many different dimensions to it. And the nature of the campaign is to reach out to organizations all across the state of every type, community organizations, statewide organizations, unions, and so on, to basically mobilize them to ask legislators to address the issues that are mentioned here. And this is done in this way because it's both an effort to educate people about the issues that are being faced by community choice programs and by ratepayers generally, but also to educate legislators as well by receiving letters from people all across the state, in particular in regions where community choice exists. So the demands are basically, it's an ask to legislators to do two things. One is to go back to the CPUC and say, you know, you should suspend this PCIA business. It really has no place. It's a political attack. And to go to the governor and say that when you're making appointments to the CPUC, that you should appoint people who are, you know, basically supportive of community choice and to community needs. So it's really an act on it's an ask on legislators to do that. So what we're doing here is coming today to acquaint you with this campaign and to ask the board to actually endorse it, to basically say that we need this support.
Time's up, Al.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Well, you didn't have to do it mid-sentence. I'd let you wrap it up.
Oh,
But
well,
you're way
you know,
over.
you knew I was going to
You're
wrap
way
up
over.
in a
and if
sec.
you
Okay.
didn't- I mean, you've obviously learned how to talk and not breathe at the same time because I couldn't get in. So,
Well, I don't read. But anyway, that's the deal. I would really like your support on this in whatever way you can, because it is really, you know, basically in our common interest to
all
work
right,
together
thank
around
you.
this.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak under public comment? All right, seeing none, we will move to the consent calendar, which is 7, 8, and 9. Thank you. Moved by Culp, seconded by
Second.
Mendel. Any objection to the motion? Motion will pass without objection. Item 10, the CEO report.
So Annie is the only item is a marketing and outreach update. This this update is specifically highlighting current status of opt-outs and some of the marketing outreach activities we have been pursuing in light of those.
While we're bringing up the slides, so we've now prepared standard slides for each monthly meeting to report out on the enrollment. There we go. Oops. There we don't go. Okay. So as you can see, we continue to maintain below 3% opt-out rate. We are seeing, you know, a tick up as customers are getting some of their first bills from EBCE. There is confusion out in the marketplace about how the discount can be calculated. I think what people are seeing is a lot of increased usage, natural gas increase with higher costs, and attributing a higher bill to EBCE. And so we're doing what we can to try and educate them by going out, having understanding your bill workshops, providing additional sources online, and providing information via social media platforms. I'm sorry, this is a different remote and I seem to have messed it up. Okay. The next one's just going to show monthly opt-out rates by residential. There we go. So you can see we're currently lower in February. The month isn't over yet, but January did have an increase in opt-outs again with, I think, bills going out to customers seeing those bills for perhaps the first time. Again, the different colors that we're seeing here are for the different channels that a customer may opt out. A CSR is a customer service representative, so a live representative on the phone. IVR is our automated phone system, and then web is via the web form. For commercial opt-outs, we did see a little tick up in January. I'm attributing that to business owners who also live within our territory, getting the notices, getting their first residential bill, and perhaps looking at their commercial bill.
So
but those have
now they don't want to just save money at home. They don't want to save money at their job.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
But you can see the lines here. I mean, that's less than 120 opt-outs from commercial customers in January. And again, anytime that a larger commercial customer, a VIP customer, requests to opt out, we do some follow-up and education, and then they are processed as requested, but there are times when we're able to provide the education and we maintain that account. So for account services for January and early February, again, just wanted to give some context to what we're seeing on the opt-out. This is the second bill. You know, people are starting to pay attention again, maybe after the holidays, certainly due to the PG&E bankruptcy. PG&E was in the media for a long time, even before they filed for the bankruptcy at the end of January, and I believe people are then going back and looking at their bill. We've heard a lot of interesting things from customers. The rate setting process in California is very complex, and most people don't understand it, so they think that with PG&E's bankruptcies or with the wildfires, PG&E can just increase their rates right away. So people were looking to see increased rates on their bill. They see EBCE, there was confusion, and so that did lead to additional opt-outs. There was also an increased usage. I think we're going to see this next month as well. I mean, we just had some very cold weather. I was out in Livermore twice, and there was snow up on the hills. So we know that people have most likely increased their usage for heating and perhaps staying inside more lights, more equipment. So we're hoping to be proactive and get the message out there about how to read your bill and analyze the bill. Natural gas rates did increase considerably at the end of the year and the beginning of this year. And then, of course, there's a lot of social media dialogue going on that does not always have the most factual information. So where possible, we're trying to get out that correct information. In general, on account services, we are still addressing billing error from PG&E. We reported out to the executive committee about this, but those bills have now gone out, and we continue to track if those opt-outs differ in any way from what we're seeing in other billing serials, meaning which group are you in. So far, that has not been the case. We sent out our first notice for the first batch of solar customers, or net energy metered customers. So we'll be enrolling customers in 5 phases. The first phase is in April, and it's about 10,000 customers. So that first notification just went out last week, and then we continue to do ongoing new customer notifications on a biweekly basis, and this is required for compliance. From marketing and outreach, I just wanted to give a quick high level of what we're doing with ongoing outreach right now. We held 7 events for Understanding Your Bill across the county, and we continue to add to those. Those have proven to be very popular. Some of the local city staff have reached out to us and asked us to come back and do another session. We're generally seeing anywhere from, I'd say, 15 to 30 people that come in to attend, and they're coming to the coffee shop specifically to talk to us. So they have their bills with them, and pretty much I think we're seeing Director Monroe was able to join us in Livermore, and I think what we're seeing is people do appreciate that we're meeting them in their own community and that we're providing the information. You know, it doesn't mean that everyone walks out and says, I don't want to opt out, but I do think it really is going a long way to show that we're part of the community and we're here to help inform and meet people where they are. We're also doing outreach in language. We have not conducted workshops before. We've done various paid advertising in language, but we did a Spanish language workshop in the Fruitvale area of Oakland. We have a video of that, and we'll be posting that online as an additional resource for Spanish language speakers. And we're doing a Chinese workshop at the Asian Branch Library in downtown Oakland in the beginning of March, and that will also be videoed, and we'll put that online as well, and that will be conducted in Cantonese. Absolutely. Yeah, we'll post those online, but I will let you know it's still in the final editing process.
Anybody got any questions? Director Cobb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we got an email that you shared with us, channel 5, I think it was channel 5, one of the TV stations had some misinformation, and you pushed back, and I want to just briefly kind of summarize what happened there, so
Sure.
we all know. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that was KPIX CBS 5. So on February 1st, a reporter reached out to me. She said she was responding to a number of complaints that were all from customers in Livermore. Because we know that customers don't all receive their bill on the same day, it led me to believe that this was probably some form of community, dialogue going on about reach out to your local reporter to get this looked at. The complaint was that the bills had increased. So both myself and Nick Chassett spoke with the reporter. Nick went into their studio in San Francisco, where he answered questions for the reporter. We provided quite a bit of information. Reporters do work on very tight time frames. So they went out, they spoke to a customer, and did not do additional analysis. So the presentation was, customer says bill's higher, EBCE says it shouldn't be, did not provide additional information, and then with a call to action to opt out. So we did follow up immediately. We were able to get in touch with the assistant news director, and for the next week we worked with them, we educated them, we talked to many people on their staff. We were assigned a new investigative reporter who then, I gave her a detailed description, walkthrough of the bill, and she did come out the week following with a piece that I think was much better. There was still, some things that were not ideal, but she did actually show that EBCE rates are cheaper than what you would have paid to PG&E, with a call to action to attend one of our Understanding Your Bill Tour events. And so I saw that as a very positive response to what had been a very poorly reported piece the prior week.
Thank you. I just want to thank the staff for pushing back. It's rare that reporters and TV station news departments acknowledge their mistakes or whatever, what have you. And so thank you for that great work and appreciate it very much.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I wanted to, being from Livermore, oh my God, 8 point, whatever. I wanted to, I've been following the social media after the workshops, and I have actually seen a change in that. So, including somebody who seems to be fairly influential, saying that there's a plan to actually opt up. So.
Okay, so with that, I would like to move on. We will. Community Advisory Committee report.
Thank you, Chair. The majority of the items that the CAC weighed in on are regular agenda items. In addition, we were also presented with the California Alliance for Community Energy's roll back the CPUC attack on our community summary document, which was presented to the board this evening. In the previous month, we had been brought the same letter that the board was also brought around supporting a call to each of our individual directors to use their voice as an elected person. However, that was appropriate for each city to really defend CCAs in this very critical moment that we do keep hearing from staff that this is a very critical issue. We supported that and came back to this body, and that was part of the minutes that were just approved. We did pass the following motion that is summarized in the annotated copy in front of you, the summary of which is that we are asking the board to formally endorse and take strong action to support the statewide rollback of the CPUC attack on our communities campaign. It's a very long named campaign. And really to ask each of you to work with staff and to make a concrete action to support the demands that staff are putting forth, and also to support the community efforts around these things. Mayor Arreguín asked at the last meeting what other CCAs were doing, and at that point the actual campaign had not been introduced. So in response to that, we did take a look, and the California Alliance for Community Energy is a statewide organization, and we have been able to verify that they are reaching out to a whole variety of organizations, including labor and business, other CCAs and CalCCA. And so I don't believe it would be abnormal for this body to serve as a leader, as we have often been leadership in the community choice movement. And so we did pass a motion to ask each of you to take an actual step and use the power of your cities or county to support staff's effort in this and to actually take a step instead of just relying on their efforts.
Any questions of Anna Olivia? Okay. In relationship to the item that's on the statewide campaign, give me some time to work with Nick on that, okay? Thank you. Thank you for bringing that report forward. Item 12 would be Chair Martinez.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to report that the contract is currently under review and subject to negotiation.
Thank you. So with that, we have nothing to do on that one. We'll move to item 13.
Good evening. Item 13 is about our net energy metering or solar policy. So I will cover the first recommendation, and my colleague Dan Lieberman will come up and cover the second recommendation. So the first recommendation to the board relates to the calculation of the annual surplus payment for new NEM or solar customers. The original policy adopted by the board in February 2018 indicated that new NEM customers would be paid out for annual surplus generation in the amount greater of retail rate capped at $2,500 or the PG&E net surplus compensation, which is essentially a wholesale rate. In December 2018, staff asked the board to amend the policy to provide greater value to customers who had some marginal kilowatt hours above that $2,500 retail cap. So we were trying to provide the best benefit for our customers. Upon further investigation, staff identified that the potential impacted population is a fraction of a percent of all of our customers and even a fraction of a percent of our solar customers. Additionally, upon working with our billing vendor, staff identified that it would be cost prohibitive to implement the updated policy. Due to the small population that would benefit from the policy update and the considerable cost, staff now recommends that we return to our original policy for payment of the annual surplus generation for new NEM customers. We did do some analysis and we found that even with the original policy, customers are still better off with EBCE under this scenario than they would be with PG&E. Dan will cover recommendation 2.
Thanks. So EBCE staff recently became aware of a scenario in which some solar net energy metered customers could fare worse on our service financially than they would have on PG&E service. Staff and the board have generally operated on a do no harm type of approach where we can make universal statements about our rate schedules, such as you get a slight discount if you're on Bright Choice. We want to avoid exceptions to that rule. As Annie presented on the previous item, we had this media, attention focused on rates, and so we're very focused on making sure that we can make these blanket statements about our rate schedules. So I worked with Taj and we went through an exercise of evaluating how many customers would meet these 3 criteria that are identified in the memo that would create that harm. And we found that it would probably be in the neighborhood of about 30 accounts per year. That will vary year to year, so we can't identify them specifically. It's just certain characteristics that would happen in terms of their amount of generation and consumption. So we put together a few options, and we have a recommended solution to update our NEM tariff and basically identify who these customers are that had a worse outcome during the year, and true them up to the compensation that they would have received had they been on PG&E service. So relatively small financial amount, but it's important in allowing us the ability to make those value proposition statements.
That's it? Okay. The way you got it, I thought you were going to... Okay. So with that, are there any questions? Questions? Then I am looking for a motion.
So I'll move the staff recommendation with thanks for catching this, because we do want to maintain that promise and allow us to all go out there and say you're going to be equal or better with EBCE than PG&E. So thank you.
So I have a motion by Mendel, seconded by Dutra-Vinacci. Is there any discussion? Is there any objection to the motion? Motion passed without objection. Thank you. Item 14 is being continued or tabled. What are you doing with it?
Yeah, I think we'd like to pull item 14. Okay. And just 14. Very briefly, on Friday, PG&E made a filing that I only became aware of this morning, seeking to change their rate-making schedule. And instead of doing a single change to their generation rate, they're seeking to stage their generation rate. So they would make a change on March 1st, and then they would make another change later in the year, and that later change would deal with the PCIA. And so in light of that change, we filed a protest today saying, no, this doesn't make any sense. You should make a single change. It's bad customer experience to do it twice. In light of that, we felt like this item should be tabled for the time being. If that rate change were to be approved, we have the authority under the decision that the board took this fall, allowing us to modify our rates to maintain our value proposition. So if for some reason rates were to change, we could make an adjustment, maintaining our 1.5% discount, and that would be something we would report back to the board at our next meeting. Our hope, though, is that the commission will decline the PG&E's request, and there will be a consolidated rate change, later on this year.
Okay, so with that, thanks for that continuance notification. We'll move to item 15, our local development business plan update, informational item.
Development, electrification, and innovation, and we'll pull up a presentation. We've got tonight an information item, which is the update on the local development business plan and our activities and plans for this fiscal year. The next item is an action item, and I'll be describing some elements of that action item in this presentation to give you some background on that. So I'll talk about that, which is a REACH code effort that we'd like to engage with as we go forward. So with that, I'll give a start. So a summary on the LDBP. It was approved in 2018 with a $2 million budget for this year. That budget, as it was written, would include about $4 million of ongoing liabilities to the business through some of the projects and programs that were recommended. We've kind of delayed those activities due to not having staffing on board, as well as some considerations around financial uncertainties with EBCE, but are now feeling like we're in a position to get going on our programs, having brought myself on board and feeling some more certainty about what's going forward with EBC from a financial perspective. So we are very excited to get going, and also want to be wise with the money that we are going to spend. So as somebody who's developed programs in the past, if I were to come in before you and say that I could spend $2 million wisely in the next 4 months, I think that would be not telling the truth. We need to be wise about how we are allocating our funds and the projects and programs that we are going to begin with. And so we definitely want to be wise about that and also spend some time and leave some time with the staff capabilities and capacity that we have to also engage with our stakeholders in our FY20 planning process, which we have to get going with now so that we can launch programs come July of this year. So quite a bit of work to do that we're excited to do, and also want to be smart about how we go about it. So as we're looking at what we want to do for this FY between now and the end of June, I'll go through a list of activities that we plan to engage with, and later on in the presentation I have a side-by-side budget analysis of the LDBP proposed budget and what we are planning to actually spend money on this year. So if we go through, we were planning to spend about $75,000 working to engage with energy efficiency program administrators in Alameda County, like Stop Waste and BayREN and other energy efficiency organizations. We're engaged with them already to think about how we can use our data to make their marketing and outreach and programs more effective. So we'll be engaging with those organizations to help build their capability and make them effective through their outreach activities. We also have a plan to engage on a REACH code effort. REACH codes are codes that cities and counties can employ above and beyond the state mandated code for things like building electrification and electric vehicles and other activities. That's actually the action item. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on that on the next slide, but we are going to plan to spend some money on that with your approval. That is an activity that other CCAs are engaged with, and cities and counties across California are working on. I'll explain that a little bit more next slide. We also want to make available some community investment grants. So the LDBP had about $450,000 of grants on 3 tracks. One of those tracks was issuing some money and grants to community organizations to bring forward pilots or other engagement capabilities with the community to help achieve EBCE's vision, and we'd like to employ some of those funds this year and get that community engagement going. The 4th bullet point is our solar and storage program for critical facilities. This is actually a program of work that has been funded through a previous effort at EBCE to bring on board a Bay Area Air Quality Management District grant. So that $300,000 grant will be used to identify solar and storage opportunities on critical facilities in Alameda County. The original grant was proposed to have about that $300,000 used to bring on external consultants. We looked at that. Looked at the scope of work, and the scope of work is pretty much bread and butter for a program manager that we are going to need the capability of at EBC as we're rolling out programs. And so instead of spending all that money on consultant, we're actually going to use about half of that budget to bring a program manager on board, which we are currently recruiting for, to do the lion's share of that grant work. That grant is in partnership with PCE, Peninsula Clean Energy. So we'll be doing an inventory of all the building stock across our 2 territories. But while we do that, we will also leverage the capability and the interactions and the stakeholder work that we'll be working through to identify solar and storage on critical facilities, to broaden that out to look at our other solar options behind the meter, in front of the meter across Alameda County. There's been some work that was done with the LDBP. They identified about 650 megawatts of solar opportunities above 1 megawatt. That was really a technical assessment, just is there the roof area to support it? It's not really an economic assessment, which is where does it make sense? So we need to build on that existing work, and we'll do that in part through this activity that's getting funded through the Air Quality Management District grant. Another activity that we are commencing on right now, and I've talked with some of the sustainability managers on the technical advisory group, is around EBCE procuring some new renewable capacity that we would then sell to you, our cities, for your city meters. That would be somewhat akin to a Renewable 100 product, priced at a brilliant 100 price. So if we can sign a long-term contract with our cities to be the off-taker for that new renewable capacity, then we can bring the cost to down a little bit from the renewable 100 offering that we currently have. So we're talking with folks, understanding what the challenges to that would be, looking to get that price, understand how we would roll that out. But that's an area that we also want to engage in with you, our cities. And then the last point on this slide is going after grant opportunities. So similar to the Bay Area Air Quality Management District grant, there's actually quite a bit of money out in the market for EVs, building electrification, air quality, and a variety of other benefits that we hold highly and sync well with the local development business plan, and we want to go and get some more of that money. And we think that we can use that to leverage our activities and build our LDBP budget. And so we're in some conversations with a few consultants who can help us do that to build our capability. That's actually the one piece that was not contemplated in the original LDBP drafting, but we think that we have pretty significant opportunity to bring some extra funds in that we can leverage for our programs. So that's the kind of budgeted planned activities for this year. Now I'm going to go into a little detail on the REACH code program. So as I said, REACH codes are codes that go above and beyond the California state standards. There is a pretty strong regional push in the Bay Area and beyond for pushing some REACH codes in around building electrification, the timing of which would be to land when the code cycle releases, which is January 2020. That means there's a very tight timeline to get this done. There is existing work that BayREN and the Building Decarbonization Coalition, the CEC, and the IOUs are doing that I've identified what's happening and where some gaps are. And some colleagues at other CCAs, PCE and Silicon Valley Clean Energy, have already gone out with a competitive solicitation, identified a consultant to do the work for their jurisdictions. And if we're to meet this 2020 timeline, we would need to kind of piggyback on that competitive solicitation, since the scope of work would be the same. And that would allow us to go forth and use that consultant to do a similar activity for our cities. I've done some informal polling and talked about this with the technical advisory group. I think there is interest at the cities, and there are some existing REACH codes at some of your cities today. And the feedback I've gotten is that this is a positive move, and your buy-in at the council level and the board level is very important to helping this progress forward, because it's often the planning departments that are making the call about whether this is going to be, whether effort will be dedicated to this. And so we need to move fast if we're going to make this happen. There is a broader push around REACH codes. The last code cycle, when solar became the California state standard, was preceded by a lot of cities requiring solar in their code. And that built a little bit of a groundswell and got the commission across the line that it wasn't too disruptive to have solar as a requirement for new homes. And the potential is that if there's enough cities that engage in this way and it doesn't create too much disruption, then building electrification could be something that might be rolled into the 2023 code. But right now we're really trying to move forward for a 2020 launch date. So we'll get into it on the next item, but the action item is the $200,000 grant for TRC Consulting to help us with this REACH code effort. So that's the REACH code program in detail that we're trying to progress with your permission. The second part of that consulting effort is we would be looking to provide some grants to the cities to help assuage the cost, because it is costly from a stakeholder management and convening perspective. And so we want to provide a little bit of grease to those wheels to help progress that forward. And that's similar to what Peninsula Clean Energy and Silicon Valley Clean Energy have done for their REACH code effort that they're commencing with now. So I'll go on to the next slide, unless there's any.
Go ahead, Director Mendoza.
Yeah, I really appreciate this. This is something we've been talking about in Hayward, is whether we wanted to move forward with the REACH code on the natural gas side. And we're hoping for more of a regional effort that we could join and be part of, and so this is perfect. timing. I'm sure the Hayward representative was one of the folks raising their hand, expressing interest when you had the meeting. We've done, in addition to the potential for a REACH code, the city has also talked about providing incentives to developers to build without natural gas. And so, they always come in asking for various easements and exceptions and variances, right? And so one of the things we tend to do is trade off. And in the past, we've traded off, well, we'll give you that easement or that variance if you'll put solar on the roof. Well, they're all required to do that now going forward come 2020. And so the next thing we're pushing for is, well, we'll give you that easement or that variance if you want to make your neighborhood natural gas free. And we already had one developer, 150 units, that accepted the deal enthusiastically because it saves them a lot of money. It's somewhere between $2,000 and $12,000 per unit to plumb for natural gas. And so when we asked them to consider that and they've looked at the numbers, they're like, well, sure. It's sort of a win-win. So I just share that as something I hope that some of you will take that back to your councils and to your staffs and sort of encourage them to push for it and use this REACH opportunity, the grant opportunity, to sort of kickstart that. So, thanks.
Director Allred and then Director May.
Thank you. This is really exciting, and we had discussion on this item, as you may expect, in the advisory committee meeting. A couple things came out of that. The first is really acknowledging how exciting it is that JP has put forward in-house job creation and taking some of the consultants and bringing it inside and really recognizing how great that is. Also, there were some concerns that were brought up that had some significant weight, like very exciting with the REACH codes, in support of that completely. But also really wanting to take a look at what that mix is, because while we were assured that everything would be in state, the municipal codes, like tying, having a municipal account receive the 100% renewable energy at Brilliant 100 rates involves long-term contracts, and it's not in county. And so there was a concern that just to be incorporated around if it would de-incentivize cities to develop local renewables if they're in a long-term contract that's outside of our county. And it was reported back that there would be a variety of options that were brought forth looking at different price points and mixes of in-county and out-of-county new renewable development, which was cool. And that looking forward with the programs that are going to be suggested for adoption, that we see in those things who the primary stakeholders or who the primary beneficiaries are, because as an organization we understand that there are 3 pillars of economic but also environmental and social equity that our county has been, and this entity has really been striving for. So making sure that we're weighing the benefits of all of those things for our community members and not just the lowest cost option. And we'll be holding a meeting on April 1st at 7 p.m. to discuss the early adoption items, and do encourage board members or their sustainability staff to attend.
Thank you, Director May. And then Cobb.
So I think that this is apt timing for us. We actually, as our council meeting last night, just had a discussion and updating our climate action plan. And one of the things that our city did was proactive in the past was looking at our expectations from our developers and projects as we're coming through. And one of the things that we highlighted is how we could have community benefits, and in particular trying to be bold in terms of our actions and deliberate in terms of supporting those that would help make us a green city. And so these types of opportunities where you're highlighting where we can be partners, whether it's advocating with our community to understand the implementations and the impacts, or for us as a city council and looking at policies that help support better actions or development in terms of housing, as well as just the overall standardization. I think those are efforts that we really would want to embrace and get involved with. So thank you so much for highlighting this to us.
Director Caldwell.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this. I think this is great, and I hope we are, whether it's now or as we keep on going further and further, very aggressive in pushing forward a number of building code policies that will get us as many emission reductions as possible. And in our city, you know, this is not a new conversation, but some developers are, you know, in the last century still, and push back against this because they're afraid that people aren't going to rent out or buy a condominium or rent out an apartment if it has an electric range or stove, even though it's not like it was in the 70s. It's much more modern and nice, and it doesn't cost any more to build. So, but whatever we could do to get these in the city's codes over time and push as quickly as possible, I'm all for, and encouraging us to incorporate these measures into our respective climate action plans. We'll then move it forward. Then that would be the first step. Then after that, it gets into our actual building codes. So anyway, thank you for this, and very excited to support this.
Director Arreguín.
I think Pilch wanted to go first, and I'll go after.
Okay. You guys go ahead. You got your own little coup going on down there. Go ahead.
So I'm unfamiliar with the term REACH codes, although we're talking a lot about electrification in our city as well. Are REACH codes typically implemented as mandatory codes, or a bit like something you can horse trade with, as Director Mandel pointed out, or something, or maybe something optional that gives you more points or reduces your fees or something like that? What do cities typically do?
Yeah, so the REACH code is the building code, so it's mandatory. There's certainly exemptions that are requested, but the way the building electrification REACH code will likely be drafted, it's still being drafted today, but it's tied to Title 24. So Title 24 is the energy efficiency code that is required across the state, and the current thinking on the drafting is, in order to push a development to be electric, if the building is going to be dual fuels, meaning gas and electric, then the energy efficiency code would be quite stringent. Whereas if the building would be all electric, then the building code would be at Title 24 level. So it won't make it mandatory to make the building all electric, but it will predispose the developer to do the all-electric choice, because it will actually likely be cheaper to do it that way than to go dual fuel. But if somebody absolutely wants to have a gas range, then they can have a gas range. That's an example.
Okay. Thank you. Director Arreguín, are you prepared to speak now?
Yes, thank you. So I want to thank you very much for these various proposals to help us move our local development business plan forward. And I particularly want to express my support for the option of a renewable energy program for city accounts, something I've discussed with our CEO. The City of Berkeley is interested in actually opting up to Renewable 100, and we've had conversation about whether Berkeley or other jurisdictions can come together to make a long-term commitment to enable a local project to be financed and constructed in Alameda County as a means to provide that local energy for our municipal accounts. And so I just want to, I know that there's some discussion about location of projects, and I want to strongly emphasize, to the extent that we can, using this option, incentivize local development in Alameda County. I think that would go a long way towards advancing the goals of this agency. And the City of Berkeley is actually very interested in discussing with any of the other cities that might be interested in exploring this option to collectively work together to explore a partnership to enable the development of a project and the procurement of long-term renewable energy locally in Alameda County to our jurisdictions. Obviously, municipal accounts are on a much smaller scale than the residential or commercial accounts, and so there needs to be some collective capacities. So I just wanted to let everyone know that this is something that our city has discussed very actively with EBC staff as a means to opt us up to that renewable option, and to the extent that we can think about working together to make that happen, I think that would be a good way to realize the goals of EBCE. And then on the REACH Code program, I'm very excited about this. As you may know, discussing with our staff, a couple years ago, actually, I authored an item to look at accelerating our efforts towards moving off natural gas towards electric and other sustainability measures of an incentive-based and mandatory approach. And so the more that we can, using these resources, adopt these local codes, I think it will go a long way to having a collective impact on reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. And so I strongly support this. Thank you very much for thinking about how we can use our money to have a collective impact, and to enable local jurisdictions to do this work, because it does require a lot of analysis and development of these codes. So I want to express my support for that as well.
No, there's more.
Well, keep going.
And just to answer there, we will go through a pricing exercise around this renewable energy procurement, and we can price 100% in Alameda County, and we can price 100% out of Alameda County, and there's variance in between, recognizing that we have to build a project, and that project doesn't have a number of sizes that we can build, but that is certainly something, an option, a set of options that we'll be able to provide, and then ultimately it's your decision around whether you want to go forward and what you're willing to pay for it. Oh boy, okay. So there are some additional programs that we are working on that we haven't allocated funding to. Is more staff time. So there's a proceeding at the Public Utilities Commission right now for community solar in disadvantaged communities. We're going after that pretty hard. Right now it's staff time because we're intervening in that proceeding and understanding what that program would look like. That would be to build community solar projects and then be able to give care customers in DACs a 20% discount on their total bill. So there's good savings to be delivered and lower bills for those customers. So that's something we want to go after to the extent it's feasible, as hard as we can. We also ran the demand response program last year. Taj reviewed the results of that at the last board meeting. And so we're going to take the learnings from that and apply it to this coming summer. It doesn't have the budget's already spent because we spent last year's dollars on that, and then the effort that we're putting in the next few months, the budget impact for that will actually be next fiscal year, which is why it's not in my spreadsheet. Actually, it is in my spreadsheet for last year, but anyway, that's something we're working on. And then we do have an enhanced NEM program for new solar on municipal and low-income customers, and I don't have a budget for that because it's really based on uptake. So as we look at the plan versus approved budget. Sorry, it's a bit of an eye chart, but I think you guys have slides. We're allocating some effort and dollars to just about every program area that was identified in the LDBP. The one exception is the Muni Fit program that we're not putting money in this fiscal year. But everything else either has effort or dollars against it. We're trying to hit all of those areas. Certainly want to recognize Anna Olivia and the CAC's perspective. We want to identify who is receiving the benefits and the activities of these programs and who are the beneficiaries. Something we'll certainly be looking at as we build the implementation plans for these activities. There is a little bit of revenue coming in, so all in we're allocating about $775,000 for this fiscal year. We'll bring in $150,000 of our $300,000 grant, so we're looking at a net budget of about $625,000 as proposed. So the last slide is coming up. Our community outreach plan, so as Anna Olivia mentioned, we do have a CAC meeting where we will gather stakeholder and community input to next year's planning process. I've also made it quite a point with the CAC as well as our technical advisory group that the budget that we are proposing is certainly not set in stone and malleable. If there's strong feedback, we're open to that. But we need to get going as well because we want to start delivering these benefits to our community. So outreach to our CAC and our TAG is in the road for both this year as well as next. So that's all I have.
All right, I'll see if anybody wants to speak again. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. And when you brought up the item about community solar for disadvantaged communities, made me think about opportunity zones. And I'm not sure what you're doing in that space. And there are different funds that are looking to invest in opportunity zones. There are tax incentive credits, what have you. And so in South San Leandro, we have the Bayfair Mall next to the Bayfair BART. And that's going to be, might be 2,000 units. So just trying to understand what are the opportunities there with opportunity zones, and just want to put that on your radar to consider opportunity zones throughout the Bay Area and how we can partner with those funds that might be buying properties like that, and to ensure that we have electrification models to generate the energy necessary to help support the model that this group has established. So I just want to bring that to your attention, and hopefully if there's questions, concerns, we can work with staff in San Leandro to maybe bring that forth, some kind of partnership.
Yeah, so CalCEF, the California Clean Energy Fund, is doing a lot of work on opportunity zones, specifically with renewable energy. So I know that group quite well, and so I have not thought about it with respect to LDBP, but thanks for bringing that up, and it's certainly something I can touch base with that team on.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
All right. With that, I have a speaker on this item, so Al Weinrab. So I guess you can speak on 15 and 16. And
it looks like that's what we're doing, yeah.
Huh?
It looks like that's what we're doing.
Right, so, and since you went 2 minutes over, you'll get 4 minutes.
Oh.
Thanks, Scott. Do you want me to cover the action item now, or do you want to do that after Al?
He can go ahead and speak to it, and then we'll get to it.
Okay.
Go ahead, Al. Do you want to do that? Do you want to speak to the action item too?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so you'll get 6 minutes, but you don't have to use it all.
I get it. The first, I'm actually representing Jessica Tovar tonight. She's down in LA, and she would normally be speaking for the East Bay Clean Power Alliance. So different hat for this one. But I just want to say the reason that Jessica is down in LA is, and I don't know if the board knows this, but Jessica recently won a national competition. It's called the Roddenberry Fellowship. It's offered to 20 organizers from around the entire country, and it was in recognition of her work in leading the East Bay Clean Power Alliance, in establishing East Bay community energy. So I think it just occurred to me, but I thought it would really be nice if the board could send her a note of congratulations or something for that. It's really quite a significant accomplishment nationwide. Anyway, so to speak to the issue here, thank you very much. We, from the East Bay Clean Power Alliance, I think most of our concerns have been addressed in one way or another. Just to underline that we appreciate effort to get JP hired and to jump on moving the local development business plan forward, as quickly as possible, given the delays and the uncertainties and so on and so forth. And to emphasize, again, the importance in terms of for the next fiscal year to have thorough discussions with the Community Advisory Committee and the community around how to prioritize and the different impacts of the different elements of the early action items as we move forward. In terms of the items that have been raised here tonight, just wanted to point out that there is the item about community investment grants And there has been some discussion within the East Bay Clean Power Alliance about that, and we wanted to make sure that these grants are offered and considered and looked at by the community itself in partnership with the staff or whoever else is offering them. It's really important to involve, respected members of the community in trying to determine like which grants, merit awards and stuff like that. So I wanted to mention that, and I hope that can be part of the implementation of that particular piece. In terms of the renewable energy for cities, thank you, Mayor Arreguín, for the point that he made, which has been a concern of the East Bay Clean Power Alliance. When we saw this, it seemed that basically if projects are built, outside our locality, remote projects that are, less costly and therefore would allow the agency to provide renewable energy to cities, it's really hard to understand that as a local development business plan item. So unless it's done in the way that Mayor Arreguín mentioned, it really would be hard to imagine why that would be considered part of a local development business plan. And then if that is done, in other words, if new sources of energy are built, within the county, within the region, it's a little bit unclear, like why just city meters themselves should be the beneficiaries of that. So, I just think there's some questions around that particular part of the program that are not too clear. So basically, those are just a few things that I wanted to point out, and I think it would be nice if somebody could make a motion for a commendation to, it's not on the agenda. Well, maybe we could do it some way, commendation to Jessica for her great work. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead and you can present now. No more questions on 15. Okay, 16.
Great, thanks. I don't have any slides on this, so basically, if we go back to, well, I do have a slide on it. The item is the action item for approving providing the CEO the authority to negotiate and execute a contract in substantial similarity to our standard contract to TRC Consulting for this $200,000 piece of work. That contract would have a fixed and variable element to it. We've started talking about price. So the fixed element would be the standard or the process for TRC to evaluate what codes are currently in place in the state and what REACH codes and other codes have been passed in our cities. And then the variable component is to the extent that multiple cities want to participate, there's essentially an allocation on a per city basis. So if 10 cities want to participate, then it's $140,000. If 8 cities want to participate, it's less. And so there's a fixed and variable component such that if there's wide participation, it would go up to $200,000. If there's less participation, then it would be less than that. But the action item is for you to provide the CEO the authority to negotiate and execute that contract.
Any questions? Comments?
I'm happy to move the item.
There you go, Cal.
Second.
Is there any objection to the motion? Motion passes. Objection. Item 17, California Renewable Energy RFP Purchase Power Agreement Review and Update. Informational item.
This item is an informational item, and in it I'll provide an overview of our form power purchase agreement and a brief update on the RFP itself. I don't have any materials or anything. Oh, okay. For background, EBC issued a competitive solicitation in June of 2018 for long-term renewable energy procurement contracts for a minimum of 10 years in duration. And EBC is targeting a total of 600 to 700 megawatts of total renewable energy capacity within the state of California, with a minimum of those being 20 megawatts located within Alameda County. EBC received a very robust list of responses from a number of developers, and has been evaluating those contracts for the last several months. We are currently in the process of now negotiating long-term power purchase agreements with a select number of counterparties, which we're very excited about. Those projects are all located within California, and we intend for those contracts to be 15 to 20-year contracts in duration. And we've worked with special counsel to develop our form power purchase agreement to be utilized for that contracting purpose. We've developed 2 contracts. One is our standalone renewable energy contract, and the other one is a renewable energy plus storage contract. Both have been circulated to certain counterparties that are under exclusivity at this stage. I wanted to provide a brief overview of those contracts. Those are pretty lengthy technical documents. As attachments to this memo, we have both of those contracts, and we also have a brief summary / overview of those contracts and some of the major provisions. That summary is about 3 pages in length, so certainly not comprehensive in walking through every detail of those contracts, but I think makes some of the more important commercial terms a bit more digestible. I'll just highlight a few of the kind of major terms that our contract covers, and then I'll briefly walk through some of the contract summary points, and then open up for any additional questions. So some of the major contract items that are included in both of these template forms are a definition for major project development milestones, and included in that is both definition and dates related to evidence of site control, executed interconnection agreement, permits received, construction start, and commercial operation date. Those are all sort of critical development milestones related to large-scale renewable energy projects. We've got contract price, of course. When we do bring forth our contracts for approval at a later date, this is an item that would remain confidential and redacted when we present to the board. Contract capacity, so overall capacity of the projects themselves. Contract duration, of course, which I noted, we are intending to have 15 to 20-year contract durations. Settlement details, much of the economics is really based off the details of the settlement process itself. Without going into too much detail now, whether you settle at sort of a P-node location versus a DLAP location can have a lot of implications on risk and sort of the value of that project. So that's an important consideration that really needs to be described in quite a bit of detail in the contracts. We talk about performance guarantees and production guarantees. So certainly as we think about solar or wind projects, the level of generation from these projects can differ and be intermittent depending on the time of day or depending on the year. And so we establish certain production guarantees based off of what are the minimum and maximum generation that would be allowed under the contract. We have certain storage operating parameters that are included. This, of course, would only pertain to the energy plus storage PPA contracts, but things like the number of times you can cycle a battery in a day, the charge and discharge efficiency of a battery, the degradation of a battery over its life. These are all, of course, very important factors to take into account as we sort of assess the value of some of the offers that we've received. Seller development security. That, of course, is a requirement that we have for all of our counterparties to post a certain dollar amount via either an LC, cash, or a guarantee. And that is, of course, to support any risk that we have with the counterparty for performance. We have certain prevailing wage requirements. There are certainly limitations on what we can explicitly require in these contracts, but we do ask all counterparties use their best efforts to pay their workers a minimum of prevailing wage. And then, of course, indemnities. We've worked with our general counsel to establish sort of our standard organizational legal language related to indemnities and things like insurance and venue, which we've included in all of our contracts. So just, again, very, very brief, high-level overview, obviously, of those terms. The intent is that we're going to complete our negotiations with these select counterparties and bring forward to the board probably between the April and May board sessions. We haven't quite yet decided if it's best to batch them or to bring them all at once. And so I think as we sort of complete those negotiations, we'll sort of determine what's best. But we anticipate in the April and May timeframe, we'll bring those contracts in an execution sort of ready form for the board for approval. The last thing I'll just say in terms of our evaluation is, a major part of our review was, of course, based off of the red lines that they've provided to these contract forms. That in conjunction with things like price, which is an assessment of economic value and risk, items like workforce development and community investment, project location, of course, with value, specific value being located in Alameda County. Project execution risk. Many projects are either earlier or later stage in terms of the development life cycle. Project delivery timing, when that project comes online, has important implications for some of our compliance requirements for our renewable energy RPS standards. And then, of course, developer experience, the credibility of these counterparties to deliver on large-scale renewable energy projects. What is their track record in doing that, getting those built and getting those financed? So really taking all of those factors into account is how we sort of arrived at the counterparties that we're currently negotiating contracts with. And we're excited to sort of move that process forward. The only other things I'll just highlight really quickly in the actual 3-page contract overview is the product details. As part of the contracts and what we'll receive from these contracts is, of course, energy, but we also have green attributes, so that takes the form of renewable energy credits in California, of course. We also have capacity attributes, so that's the resource adequacy that we've talked much about. And then certainly ancillary services that may come from a project. Some of that may be delivered through the storage component itself. What I'll say about pricing is that the pricing is based off of a megawatt hour basis for the renewable energy product. And then for the storage product, it's actually based off the capacity amount. So if a battery has a 20 megawatt storage capability, we charge that on a certain dollar per sort of megawatt or kilowatt month basis. It's a sort of a flat fee because we have a lot of flexibility with how we utilize that battery, and so it's not on a megawatt hour basis. So those are some important factors to take into account as we've sort of evaluated projects. I think with that, I'll open up to any questions that the board might have.
Thank you. Are there any questions before I go to the speaker? Okay, Al.
Thanks, Howard. Appreciate it a lot. You didn't specifically say anything about the question of unionized workforce, and so I just wanted to ask about what that was. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that sort of talked around it, but never said specifically whether there's a preference for unionized labor and unionized firms and so on.
Yep, absolutely, and there certainly is a preference for union workforce. I think we've been careful with what we've required in terms of the contract, but there's been a strong preference for projects with union workforce. And our expectation with all the counterparties that we're moving forward with is that they're all working with union labor.
Okay, so this is an informational item. If there's no questions, I'm going to move on. Okay, so we'll move to the item 18, action item on the WeWork lease renewal.
So at our last meeting, there was some discussion of a potential lease agreement at 1212 Broadway. There was some concern raised about the fact that it's an older building. We did pull the seismic study, and we had a third-party engineer do an evaluation. While the building did not have any major seismic risks, it didn't have a completely clean bill of health. It is an older building. And so we have shifted our focus away from that building to other sites. In the meantime, we do want to have the ability to extend our WeWork lease for up to 12 months. That being said, our expectation is that we may, as soon as our March meeting, bring forward a lease proposal at a building that has been built in the last 20 years.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you said. Did you at our March meeting you may have a building?
Yes.
So then therefore, the action that we're doing today would be mute.
So, we may bring it forward, the board may not approve it. We want to just make sure that we have the ability, if necessary, to extend our WeWork lease. We're currently on a month-to-month, and we can continue on a month-to-month, but we are also getting at sort of the cap of, our authority, so financially. So I just wanted to sort of put it out there, like we may if this site doesn't work in the next month or so, I do expect that we may want to sign a slightly longer, say a 6-month or potentially even a 12-month lease at WeWork to get a slightly lower cost.
Okay, thank you. I understand now. I would like to get this building thing wrapped up sooner than later, and I would like to get out of the WeWork building. I think it's pretty expensive. And so hopefully you will have something for us in March. Is there anybody else on this item? Motion?
So moved.
Moved by Cole. Second. Is there any objection to the motion? Motion will pass without objection. Item 19.
So item 19 is our proposed meeting schedule for the balance of the year. You'll note that we continue to have first and third Wednesdays with the option to cancel our first Wednesday meeting if it's not needed. We do have August recess scheduled. So that's the schedule for the balance of the year.
Okay, so is there any comments on the schedule?
I'm just wondering how important it is that we hang on to that second meeting date. We haven't used one in a while.
It's easy enough to cancel it. I think by code we have to throw something like that out, and I think it's easier to cancel it than add it because then it becomes a special meeting, and then I think we have limited action at that point.
We do have a board retreat planned on March 6th, so that is, one use of the meeting is it's on calendars, and it does facilitate things like that. But obviously, we'll take whatever direction you give.
So I guess it's fine.
Leaving it there.
I would just ask that when you decide that we're not going to need that meeting, let us know, because you haven't been doing that. And so, I don't know about the rest of you, but I've been holding it. And then sort of finding out that day, well, I guess I'm not going. So it'd be nice to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pilch?
I know.
Rude?
Just wanted to echo Board Member Mendel's comments that, it would be appreciated if we could pick a date of the month and stick with it as opposed to going back and forth on short notice. I don't know, I'm not aware of any other regional bodies where the meeting dates are that up in the air. So now that we have an executive committee and are able to respond quickly, I think the impetus of having bi-monthly meetings has diminished, and I personally would appreciate only having to hold one date a month, especially now that we're talking about establishing committees as well.
Okay, so with everybody's comments, I'm looking for some sort of motion.
Scott,
no, hold on, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Director.
Thank you. Yes, I have to say when I looked at this item today for those dates, I kind of cringed a little bit because of all of my other meeting schedules. But if the reality is it's the majority of the time we'll just be meeting the third meeting or the third Wednesday of the month, then I think that's fine with the knowledge that that first meeting is just a placeholder, and if we're going to need to be used, you would let us know as soon as possible.
Director Cobb.
I'm just wondering, if we, for everybody here, would it be better, worse, or the same if we started at 5:30 instead of 6?
6 is fine with me.
Worse.
Yeah, I think Director Rude had a problem with 6 too, don't you?
At 5:30, earlier.
Or if we met earlier at 5:30, wasn't that problematic for you?
Yeah, I mean 6 is already impossible.
Yeah,
So
I thought we'd kind of done this dance before and had this discussion, and it's just we were lucky to get 6 squeezed in there.
All right, no problem.
Okay, all right. So, motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there an objection to the motion? Motion will pass without objection. Are there any board member comments? So,
Yes.
Just real quick, Nick. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. I'll go after.
I'll be away. So on the 17th of April, I'll be in travel. So I'll probably have my alternate here on the 17th of April.
Okay.
Thank you.
The check presentation, Nick, is this Monday or this Tuesday?
This Tuesday. So this coming Tuesday at the Alameda County
Is that
Board.
in your report? Are you going to do that?
Yes.
You're going to make that report?
Yes.
Okay, then I'll hold off on that. And then, you know, I didn't get any responses from you. I think I got one response, actually 2 responses on the committee assignments. I can't put the committees together. I can just put them together and hope you get the right ones, but the response was underwhelming. So if you would please do that so we can get you assigned to your committees and get the committees up and running.
Do you have my response? Because I think I might have sent it to Stephanie or not.
I didn't get it.
Okay.
That'd be helpful.
Did you get my response?
So you get a pass. I think Mendel sent something in, didn't you? And I think Rude sent something in, didn't you?
I said you could put me on whichever one you wanted.
Yeah.
I sent something in.
Pardon me?
I sent something in. You didn't get it?
No. On the committee assignments?
Yeah.
No. If you could resend it or check the email address, that would be helpful.
Chair?
Yeah, what?
Commissioner, Director
go
Haggerty,
ahead.
if Stephanie could just send us out that email to respond to, because I actually thought I responded, and then when I went looking for my response, I couldn't find it. So I don't know if I did or not.
Yeah, well, look, if you did it, if you could resend it, that'd be great. If you're comfortable sending them to Stephanie, she can compile them and I'll sit down with her. If you didn't do it, please do it so we can get them up and going. Okay? All right. Nick?
Yeah, so the final item I wanted to share as an announcement is this coming Tuesday at the Alameda County Board of Supervisors meeting, EBC will be formally repaying the startup loan that the county advanced us.
I vote against that.
So we will be keeping our commitment to the county and paying back just over $4.5 million that the county lent us over the last year and a half or so. I think what's particularly exciting to note is $4.5 million has resulted in almost $3 million of savings. So if you think about it, it's $400 million investment, almost 75% return on that money for the people of Alameda County in less than a year of operations, and that's just going to keep growing and bringing those benefits. So thank you very much, and we're very excited about it.
So,
and we got a great clerk from this as well.
Yeah, there you go. So the point of the reason I brought it up is I would really appreciate it if as many of you could be there as possible to help celebrate. I mean, this, in my opinion, truly is a celebration. And I would really like the board members there, if possible, to make sure they're acknowledged and also a helping hand over that
What's
check.
the date and time again?
They'll send you an email. My sense is that it would be Tuesday. It'd probably be a 10:45 set item. And I'll try to hold them to that because we also have Urban Shield that day. So that might take a while. So I'll try to make sure that we go on before Urban Shield. And some of you may want to stick around for it and say something nice about it. All right. So with that, that's it for me. Anybody else have anything? All right. Well, listen, thanks for the snacks today. It was really awesome. We've been passing back oranges and Skittles and everything else. So I want to thank you all for that.
So should I move to somebody else to pass it for the next month? Should we rotate that responsibility?
No. It comes with that seat. So, okay, with that, we're adjourned.
All right, so moved.
Oh, and note that we're adjourned to the Castro Valley Library on March 6th.